If you're struggling with self-criticism, then you definitely want to tune in. And the reality is that majority of us struggle with self-criticism, and it's an inherent part of being a human being. Now, the thing with self-criticism is that there's constructive self-criticism and then there's destructive self-criticism. So what I want to focus on here is how to get rid of destructive self-criticism, because constructive self-criticism can be seen as self-reflection. And so there is a very fine line between the two. And many of us struggle to see what that fine line is. We may have good intentions in terms of being self-reflective, but then all of a sudden it gets into this snowball effect of self-criticism. And then it's hard to stop, because once we get into that mode, that mindset, then it just continues to create more and more momentum. And then we find ourselves at this place where we just don't feel very good about ourselves. Now, for a lot of guys, we continue to keep ourselves busy. And so that can kind of take our mind off of the self-criticism and keep us out of that, I'm going to say, that pitfall of being overly overwhelmed with self-criticism, and specifically destructive self-criticism. But there are always moments in our lives when we struggle with it. I know I've struggled with self-criticism in the past. Every once in a while, I struggle with it going in the present times, and I'm sure we're going to struggle with it in the future. But here's how to deal with it. There's specific tactics and techniques to make sure you stay on the line of self-reflection versus destructive self-criticism. And the first thing that you need to know is that you have to do it consciously, right? Self-criticism can be done both consciously and unconsciously. The challenge is that our brain goes into what we call default mode network. Estimates are roughly about 47 to 50% of the time, meaning half the time we're actually daydreaming. We're in this non-focused state and our mind is just drifting somewhere. That's why mindfulness practices are so important, to bring you back into that state of consciousness, right? Awareness and alertness. But when we do go into this mode, a lot of the times we are thinking about the past or the future, and a lot of the times it's also self-critical. Studies have also shown that when we daydream, a lot of it is not fun, it's not good. When you're a child, that daydreaming can be fun, but as you get older, you have more responsibilities, you're accountable for more things, you have more bills to pay, more problems to solve. That daydream, or those moments of daydreaming, can actually become very destructive. So anytime that you are finding yourself being self-critical in a daydreaming state, you have to bring yourself back into the present moment and be conscious of it. So that's the first aspect, is you got to be consciously self-reflective, or you could say self-critical. The second is have structured time for it. And that kind of relates to the first aspect. If you're conscious, you can actually control how much time you're spending. So if you are wanting to self-reflect or be self-critical, only do it for a certain amount of period of time during the day. You can schedule some time out in the morning, schedule some time out in the afternoon, and maybe even in the evening if you want to. But don't ruminate throughout the entire day, because when you do that, then you're basically just creating more momentum. You want to keep it finite. You want to keep it within a certain parameter. That way you can actually control your self-criticism. So don't allow yourself to be self-critical throughout the day, because that's not very good. Here's something that's very important that I learned the hard way, is that never be self-critical, or you always avoid moments of being self-critical if you are in low energy state. That means that if you have not eaten properly, you have not drank enough water, not had enough sleep, maybe not exercised for the day, you're just feeling low energy or lethargic or just emotionally drained or cognitively drained, you don't go into self-critical mode at all. You don't even go there, because that's very important. You have a higher chance of being extremely self-critical and thinking just crazy thoughts or very destructive thoughts when you're low energy. And that's not productive. You want to be constructive in your self-criticism. Remember, constructiveness is what's going to lead to progress going forward, not destructiveness. So that's important to focus or pay attention to. The other factor is consistency. So being self-critical, typically what ends up happening is you are thinking the same thoughts over and over and over and over again. It's pretty much on autopilot. It's like repeat. You're playing the same record and over again. Your self-critical thoughts most likely are not new thoughts. They are thoughts that you've been thinking about over the last little bit, perhaps months, maybe even years, maybe even decades, right? So these are thoughts that just continue to auto replay, just continue to go around, and you got to be able to stop that. And the best way to stop a consistent self-destructive or self-critical, which is destructive thought, is to be consistent in your positive voice, right? So what I always say is the loudest voice in your head wins. So if you're finding that you're constantly being self-critical of yourself, you got to boost yourself up. You got to either tell yourself that you're doing good or making progress in some particular areas, hang out with some good people. You got to change your physiology. You got to change your mood, change your state, and do that consistently. So anytime I find myself in a self-destructive mood, I have to go for a walk. I got to do some kind of, you can say Tai Chi or Qigong practices, move my body, exercise. I have to be consistent with it. I got to keep telling myself I'm making progress. I'm making progress. So instead of having a consistent negative voice, I have a consistent positive voice. That is very, very important to avoid self-destructive criticism. And then the last factor is to really shut down those negative voices when you don't need to hear them. I know it's difficult to do, but you don't even go there. It's like a thief. The best way to keep a thief out or a robber out or a criminal out of your house is to lock the friggin' doors and keep them locked, right? You keep them locked at night. You don't leave them open, and you don't leave the door open, because that's just an easy way for them to get in. And so as soon as just use this analogy, if you're at the front door and you see a thief running towards your door, you shut it. You don't even let that thief in. So the same goes for your thoughts. If you're going down the path of having destructive thoughts, just consistent self-criticism that's not helping you, then you just shut the door. Every time that thought pops up in your head, like perhaps it's, why do I keep doing the same thing over and over again? Right? I keep have the same habits, the same bad habits over and again. Why do I do that? You just shut that door down. You just don't even ask yourself that question. You shift that question into something else. How do I do something more progressive or positive right now? So these are the techniques that you use to stay on the right side of self-criticism, not on the wrong side, which is self-destructive criticism. So you got to be conscious, right? Try not to go in the daydream mode when you're being self-critical. You got to have structured time. Right? So keep your time, keep that self-criticism within a structured time. You want to make sure you're high energy. Keep your energy high if you're self-reflecting. You don't want to keep it low, because if you keep it low, it's going to be self-destructive. And you want to be consistent in your positive voice. Right? Remember that negativity actually creates fast momentum. You want to keep it positive. And the last factor is don't even go there. If you've been thinking the same thoughts over and over again and it starts to creep up on you again, just shut the door. Don't even go there. So those are the elements, the 5 elements to really focusing on constructive self-critique and not going over to the side of destructive self-criticism.